Hi guys, hi, thank you then, thank you Zoya, thank you Shubha, thank you Arya for coming today and joining us for the A-Team chat. For the participants, today we're going to be discussing what exactly a director's team does on floor. Before shoot, on floor, post shoot, everything that goes into making a film from the director's team and the people who are responsible for realizing the director's vision. And I hope you have your questions ready because we're going to be taking questions throughout the session and we will keep taking up questions as and when. In the end, we have allotted 30 minutes to answer your questions specifically. I would like to thank Barkha and Keddhar who have started this initiative, who donate all the proceeds to frontline workers who are working through day and night for COVID relief, for our COVID patients. And all the proceeds from this session are also going to them. It's going towards their nutrition, towards their gear, towards anything that they need in the hospital. So thank you, Barkha and Keddhar. They're going to join us later and say hi. Without taking any more time, which is going to start, I'm going to leave you guys for the session. And yeah, looking forward to this. Thank you, guys. Do you guys want to start with talking about what exactly is a role of an assistant director, of a script supervisor, of a producer? Like, how does it start? Who's the first one to get on board? How exactly do you start working on a script once you receive a script? What is the process that takes you into the journey?
Yeah. All right. Hi, everyone. Hi, guys. And thank you, Red Sparrow, and thank you, everyone. Tough times, and, happy to help with some distraction for 2 hours and hopefully some good proceeds to frontline workers. So yeah, so if you, please feel free, guys, to send in questions. I'll try and give you a very sort of short version of this. And, obviously, I mean, the guys on the panel, please feel free to come on in. So I'll try and, use it I'll try and give you an example. So let's say I find an article in the paper that I really like. One way to sort of develop that is to I'm a producer on that and I hire a screenwriter who then develops that script. I then find an investor who sort of raises some money for development, let's say, which is soft prep or pre-production. And you get that script up to a certain level of, let's say, complexity and, nuance. And subsequently, you take that script to say, perhaps you attach a director, if you're not directing yourself, and you perhaps attach some talent, right? At which point you're ready to sort of put it together as a package of sort of a treatment note or a pitch document, and you're able to sort of go to either platforms or streaming platforms or self-fund it. Let's say all goes well and you get a certain amount of money to sort of start making that film. Then the people that come on board is like, it's a cascading effect. So it starts very small and then the project just grows and then it sort of shrinks again. So the producer and the line producer, and I'll make a small distinction here quickly. If you imagine a budget on an A4 sheet, there is a line, and below that line is the line producer ke kharche. Assistant director, cinematographer, reels, catering, locations. And above that line is stars, directors, and script writer, let's say. So line producer, let's say, will then put together the team, location managers, first ADs, production designers, hair, makeup, wardrobe, so on and so forth, and casting directors and so on. You will then go into prep. You will then go into shoot, where it'll expand a lot more with script supervisors, gaffers, grips, electrics, etc. You will then get into sort of post, where you will sort of taper down a little bit, and your original A team will continue, and some people from production will continue. So broad strokes would be soft prep or development, pre-production, production, which is your shooting period or principal photography, post-production. You would then go on to some kind of distribution and sort of P&A or marketing and advertising and promos. Very sort of short, broad strokes version. Please, Arya and Zoya and Shubha, please contribute to that. I don't know if that was too fast or helpful.
No, I thought it was perfect.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
we're all below the line right now. All of us here. I mean, the four of us here. I'm assuming. I don't know actually about Arya and Udayan.
One thing, actually, I'll add one thing, guys, which is an important thing. So if the topic of today is sort of the A team that supports that director, so the people here are below the line because we are support staff to the larger creative vision of the film. So we're smaller cogs in a larger wheel that helps the director realize his or her creative vision. So Arya would have a role to sort of help handhold and execute that. So would I, so would Zoya, and so would Shubha. It would be their vision that we are executing. We are his or her troops on the ground, trying to keep time and budget and creative integrity at all times high.
Yeah. I mean, taking a lead of where, I mean, Udayan left off and like exactly what he mentioned in terms of, first of all, I just want to say hi to everyone. I can see a lot of you guys from the AD session, so hi. And I'm really glad to see you all here. But I know you guys also have known, I mean, how we've discussed the process of what it's like when you go into pre-production. Like Udayan mentioned, there's pre-production, there's production, and there's post. So there are 3 different legs of it. And like Shikha had asked, I mean, all of us have a role to play that is, I mean, a pivotal role that everyone plays and everyone contributes, because as we know, like making a film is all about teamwork. It's all about everybody coming together to actually like execute the vision of the director and the writer, the creators of a show, of a film, of a series, whatever it is. I mean, we're all there to help facilitate that and then bring it to life. So I'm just going to quickly speak about what an AD does and what an AD team does. And for all of you who just want to be just roughly acquainted with it, and then I'll pass that on to Shubha, of course, who will also go into what it's like, what it means to be a script soup and like the specialization of the role, etc. But like an AD team, like Udayan mentioned, like first you'll have your soft prep, where you would develop the project and you do all of your referencing in terms of what it's going to go in to make the film. And then once you go into pre-production, at that leg of the process is when you get in an AD team. So like for a lot of you here, I'd mentioned before, first maybe your line producer or your executive producer would hire the first AD, who would eventually bring on their team. And it's usually the first AD who will hire their team. Sometimes it would be in conjunction with what the director wants, but usually it's like a team that comes together, and usually you have, it's not like all the roles are very, very defined, but there are like standard industry standards about what you would have in terms of the first AD who's going to be doing your planning and prepping and making sure that they're scheduling and executing the film. You would have a second AD, maybe you'd have 2 second ADs, one would be key, one would be on set, who would be looking at making sure that all of the HODs and all the heads of department are sort of consulted, and we sort of bring it together. So technically what an AD does is, an AD is a point of communication, like where we kind of bridge the gap between all of the departments and them executing their processes and what the director actually wants. So you would have different ADs who sort of have roles in making sure that they are communicating with the other departments. So technically, in terms of what we're doing, we're facilitating other people to do their work smoothly. So it's like, the people keep joking about it. It's like, what is an AD actually doing? You're just standing there saying, "Aur kitna time, sir? Aur kitna time lagega?" But that's what we do. Like, we take all the information that we get, the information from a script, which is what we do when we break down, or information that we get from departments, and we organize all the information, and then we use all the information that we have to plan meticulously and execute a shoot. And then eventually the role of an AD, very generally you'd see that person there during pre-production, and you'd see that person through the principal photography phase or the production phase. And if there's any sort of B unit, or there's any there's any more that we still need to shoot in terms of second unit, you'd have ADs there. But towards the end, the final leg, which is what you would see in post-production prior to distribution and stuff, you would see maybe 1 or 2 ADs at max. You might see a DA, you might see an AD who gets converted into a post role. But an AD's primary job is to help a director smoothly execute the film or the series or the project at hand. So what we do is we take all the information, we break ourselves into departments, like where you've got a first AD, a second who's looking at hair, makeup, wardrobe. You have third ADs who are looking at other departments, and maybe we'll go into that in detail later on in the session if we want to discuss that. But the ADs generally are your main point of communication, along with production, and like they're also in this, working together with other departments to make sure that we can bring the film to fruition, or the project, whatever we have. So with that, I'll pass this on to Shubha to explain what a script soup does.
Yeah, I mean, very in contrast to this global roles of a producer and the AD team, the script supervisor is a very focused, very small department. It's usually one person. Historically, script supervisors in India didn't exist. They were part of the AD department. But over the years, with a lot of Hollywood influence and Western influence, it has evolved into a department of its own. And I think it should be that, because literally the script supervisor is a bridge for the director and the editor. It's also a bridge between like the writer, director, and the editor. So you kind of like help the director realize what is written, and you help the editor understand what the director has shot. So that's where we kind of come in. And script supervisors are supposed to have intense memories. We don't. You're trained to do it exactly the way you're trained to play the guitar. Yeah, so I mean, there is very, at the most basic level, a script supervisor makes sure there's continuity in a film, because the film is not shot in a linear fashion. What is probably the last scene might be shot in right in the middle, what is in the middle might be shot first thing. And so you have to make sure that the cast and the story is in continuity. So you say, okay, he walked out in this costume, he walked in this costume, he looked like this, this is 2 years later, and this was 4 years back. And so all those kind of timelines, you make sure that it's in continuity, so that because it's shot in a non-linear fashion, you do a lot of intensive notes to make sure that you have all the notes, and you say, okay, this time he has to have a beard, and at this point of time her hair is really short, or her clothes are like drenched, and like, you know, those kind of things. So that's the most basic level. At as you go along the ladder, it's also about some basic level of lighting continuity, edit pattern, and to know that we haven't missed out shots story wise, to make sure that we kind of realize the director's vision of what we want to do in each scene. And if your rapport with the director is wonderful, then it goes into creative aspects of like, you know, there is a space that you kind of open up for yourself in the creative realm, where you can say, you know what, I think it might be nice if you do this, and it might be like if we get this shot or this kind of a pattern. But that's really like not your, that's like the cherry on the cake which you have to earn. Otherwise, this is the job. I think I'm done.
Yeah. I have a couple of things that I can expand on, and Zoya, tell me if that.
Yes, sure,
yeah?
please.
So I think one very important thing that I don't know how many of you listening have some feature film experience, but one of the reasons for the complexity and the requirement for a Zoya, me, Arya, or Shubha is because we don't shoot in order. Now, let me expand that a little bit, right? So sometimes it's a very obvious thing, but you know, for someone who's perhaps not done you know, feature length work, perhaps it's not so obvious. Because you don't shoot in order, let's say you shoot all the scenes that belong in, I don't know, Bombay Yacht Club together, and you shoot all the scenes that belong in, I don't know, a bar in Bandra together, you're shooting out of order. So you're shooting something that is scene 1, and right after that scene 17, and right after that 23. And then 24, which should be right after you exit Bombay Yacht Club, but you're on a street which is actually shot in Ahmedabad. That's Shubha has to make sure that, acha, ye pehna tha, thoda sa pitta patta rain ka tha, is haath mein ye briefcase tha, etc. So our job, so if the director is dealing with principal actors and directing performance, what we are doing as his A team is making sure that when we're shooting out of order, nothing gets left behind. He has the right coverage, the right shots to be able to edit and put that together. The other thing that I want to just pick up on what Zoya said is that hub of communication, guys, is a super, super, super important thing to understand from at least an AD department and also production to an extent, right? So I'm giving away a little bit of a trick here, but like when I hire people, I usually have only one question. Like when I hire a second who I haven't worked with before, all I say is this, and I'll expand on this. If I were to tell you that tomorrow I need 200 more extras, who do you tell? It's a simple question, okay? So a lot of people will say, we tell the extra supplier, we tell the producer. Some will say, oh, we tell the line producer. Some will say we tell the production manager, and some will say we tell the line producer and the production manager. And we'll also tell catering. Now we're talking. You have to inform transport, tenting, catering, spot boys, line producer, hair, makeup, wardrobe. You have to understand who those 200 are. You have to have toilets for those 200. You have to have hair, makeup, wardrobe stations for those 200. You have to have snacks and water for those 200. An additional 200 has to be spun through the loop by a second to all relevant departments. And the hub of communication is important. I hope that example helps expand on that a little bit. So it leads to one more thing that I always like to sort of segue into is you have to get organized to stay organized. So if you already have your templates in place of never trust your brains on anything, trust a notepad and pen. If you have a system that tells you jab khabar aati hai, kis ko batana hai. Jab extras ki aati hai, I have a list. These are the people who impact on extras. When it's an art change, these people. Location, these people. So, it may be early for some of you who haven't done that much work, but as you get a chance to work, start to put in systems and processes and lists so that no matter what changes, if it's a YouTube video or a Zoom call or a series or a short film or a TV show, you have a system in place that tells you when X changes, you inform 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when Y changes, you do the same thing. And that's something that I kind of like to emphasize.
Very nice.
Yeah. I feel like then exactly what you mentioned is something that is, it resonates anywhere. It doesn't matter what you're working on. And it's something that it's a question that I've gotten like repeatedly, like from people that I've spoken with, like so many ADs on this particular group right now who are here. And I've had this one question that people have asked, okay, so is it different when you're working on a film that is a project that is super organized or some place where you have a lot of prep time or whatever? But at the end of the day, if you aren't organized or you're unable to create or have a system that works, you won't know what to do when plan A changes to plan B. As in, yeah.
Exactly. And I get a lot of criticism for this, and perhaps people see my value retrospectively or later looking back. But the thing is, it's not as if this is a rigid system that doesn't let you change things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That straight jackets the director. Now, let me try and expand on that. So suppose we go to a location, right? And let's say it's a film that's going to be shot in a theater, okay? People are watching a movie, right? So if one were to choose that location, you would go to that location and you would recce it, guys. So it would be a location rec. Actually, pause. I'll back up one more. There would first be a location scout. So these cinema halls would be shown to the director and production designer. And then we would choose two. And as the core team, director, DOP, production designer, first AD, maybe location manager, would go visit two. When you see them, on that recce day, the director needs to worry about, am I looking towards the screen or am I looking towards the people watching the film? How many extras do I need to have? What kind of lighting, night, day, blah, blah, blah. You have to figure all that out. But you also have to figure out, where are you parking generators? Where are you putting toilets? Where are you putting tech parking? Where are you feeding people? Where are your bathrooms, right? And you have to make the director commit to, I will never look at the balcony, so you don't need to put people there. And you need to get production to commit on the behalf of the director and DOP that, you know what, I will never see the exterior of the cinema and the actors walking. You can park all your trucks there. It helps to commit people and hold them to this later when you're shooting. Otherwise, Arya and me will be standing on set looking at trucks and the DOP will put that camera and say, listen, move that generator, move that vanity van, move this. I need to see the exterior of this cinema hall. It looks beautiful. The light is amazing. So here's what we can do. If we have the resources, we can say, okay, you know what? We'll get you your shot. But let's start inside. We'll shoot inside. By then, I'll clear the trucks. Last thing we do around sunset, we'd send everybody home. We'll come back and do it. So the questions are not to straitjacket the director. They're still supporting. We're still supporting cast. But our brain will say, yaar, ye shot na, aisa hai. Aap aaj mat lo. हम परमिशन लेके ना सुबह B कैमरा भेज देंगे. आप कल ले लेना जब हमारी ट्रकें अलग लोकेशन पे चली गई होंगी. आज आप अंदर का ही शूट करो और शाम को कर लो या मत करो क्योंकि आपने बोला था कि नहीं करना. So this is the game we play as support staff, saying, okay, Mr. Director or Miss Director, you can either have the exterior of the cinema or you can have 1 extra hour to direct your actors inside the cinema. Choice is yours, right? And you present them with that choice because you are still in a supporting role. It is not your call.
Yeah.
If he says, I want both,
and
we have to go overtime by half a shift, well, Arya and me better suck it up because we are not the decision makers. We have to present them with the fact. Then they have to take a call. So it's sort of also an example that I love using because it also helps expand a little bit on the complexity of decision making in terms of budget impact. So I'll expand one more, right? So you're shooting on a Monday and you had a 7 to 7 shift. 7 बजे आपका पैकअप हो रहा था, खत्म हो गया. बट अब आपने एक्सटीरियर भी शूट करना है, 7 बजे तो सनसेट हो गया. अब आपने लाइटिंग भी करनी है टू मेक इट लुक लाइक डे. अब आपके 8, 9, 9:30, 10 बज गए, आपका लोकेशन चला गया आगे, बढ़ गया कॉस्ट, एक्स्ट्रास का शिफ्ट बढ़ गया, क्रू का शिफ्ट बढ़ गया, खाना मंगवा लिया, और अगले दिन का कॉल टाइम 7 बजे रखने के लिए सब चू करेंगे क्योंकि आपने 10:30 पे पैकअप किया है. So the knock-on effect of that is on the whole schedule, and that's the complexity that an Arya, me, Zoya, this is what we have to do. So, I mean, and everyone will contribute to it. So Shubha will say, your scene starts on them. It starts on this couple chatting inside the theater. Do you need that shot outside? Like, do you have time in the cut to establish them walking in? And you weigh all these odds and you try and explain कि यार इसके तो मतलब एक हफ्ते का शेड्यूल बिगड़ जाएगा, ये मत लो, या बी यूनिट को भेज दो, या चलो पैसे खर्चो और देखा जाएगा.
Yeah. It's permutation, combination of everything. And I feel like also what Udayan said is that our first incentive is to try and get the director the shot. It's not like, if something doesn't work out, the first thing you want to do is see how to facilitate that. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to compromise the vision of whoever the person is. You want to try and make it happen. So we'll rally together to make it happen. It's only when it's impossible or it's really feeling like if you have to take a shot at sunset, for example, and you want that particular shot and you're going to lose light and there's nothing you can do about it, versus a shot that you still need to take, which is important for the edit, what do you do? And at some level, that's also something that it really helps to have the script soup who you're speaking to about this stuff, because they can also weigh in with, guys, this is what is going to make it, because also they're looking at it. That's why sometimes we have a floor plan, and I'm sure Shubha will be able to expand on this afterwards. It helps us be organized. When you're running a set, at the end of the day, it's like putting everything into process and trying to do whatever you want to do smoothly. So the ways to organize that and see that we get an efficient day of filming, because there will be, like, the one thing you realize is that things are going to go wrong. It doesn't matter how planned you are on a set. At some point, shit is going to hit the fan. It's about how you process things from that point onwards, because you might have a day where you have 5 shots planned for the day and you go to plan, but those 5 shots don't take 5 hours, they take 11. And if that were to happen, what does it mean? How do you go from there?
See, the thing is, each of these roles, whether you're an editor or maybe even a costume designer, or even if you're doing catering on a film set, okay, it adds layers to things that you can do better, so from catering you can become a producer, or like a director even, because each of these things adds to something about the way you function, and you're always learning, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, but you're always learning, and that doesn't stop, and I think that's the exciting thing.
And it may seem like an impossible thing to break into, guys, but if you look at it over a period of a 6-month, 8-month period, you those will be a better 6 months than the previous ones, and then the next will be better, and the next will be better, and then there'll be many downs and many ups. And when you retrospectively look back, you'll realize that you've actually progressed. When you're in it, you may not think that, but when you look back, you realize, well, I have learned something.
See, I think very few companies have a captive workforce that works with them regularly. Almost 80% or maybe 90% of the industry works as freelancers, and that's something that is a learning curve. It's not easy to suddenly be flush with money and then know exactly 2 months later you're going to be broke as hell because you've not got your next gig. Okay, so forget about money. It's also about time. You're so busy that you don't even have time to dream. Okay, and then you actually finish the job and you have so much time you can't dream. So it's always contrast, and the thing is that it takes some learning to get used to that freelancer's life. So you always so you finish a project, you go through one full rebound effect, you go through all the heartbreak and all that, and then you kind of bounce back, you start doing things with your time, and then move on to the next project. So it's always this thing that kind of it changes, and it grows, and so it's never constant. Very few people actually work full-time for production houses. They might be accountants, lawyers, and some support staff. But the best career professionals are all probably I'm not saying that accountants and CFOs are not best. What I mean is a lot of them are freelancers.
Yeah. If I were to bet and predict the biggest shortage we'll have 5 years from now, it'll be accounting. Trust me, guys.
I totally agree.
Because
People are poaching accountants.
Yeah.
And film accountants really, I mean, that's a job I think I should have learned.
Yeah. So
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah. Completely.
So we have a COVID question now, and it says, has any one of you worked under COVID times? How is it different? Do timelines change? Does scheduling the day seem longer because separating crew and people? Also, COVID insurance on set. How is it different from pre-COVID and now?
So basically, my experience, I think I started off, I came in like last lockdown in July doing ads for the first month or so. I mean, I'm currently, by the way, on COVID test number 89 probably since we started testing back in the day. But I've had experiences shooting in both a bio bubble, quote unquote, and also shooting locally in Bombay, where it changes a lot of things, because at the end of the day, I mean, theoretically as well as for insurance. So I had two different experiences, one as a showrunner on a project and one as a first AD on a project, in terms of it being long format. So there were very different, there was a very different perspective in both things. Although in many ways it was tied together. Like, the thing is, it definitely changes your scheduling, because you have to account for a lot more, in the sense that you have to account for the fact that there's a certain safety protocol that needs to be followed on a day-to-day basis, that you need to sanitize sets, that you need to make sure that there's a certain level of social distancing, which you will theoretically put into practice. But then, of course, eventually, shit may hit the fan, and you need to make sure that everybody at all times is masked, and everybody at all times is, is adhering to your basic, protocol norms. When you have a safety officer, a health and safety officer who may be on set, a COVID compliance officer who's trying to make sure that people are sanitizing their hands, that equipment is being sanitized frequently, that nobody's unmasking for no reason. And all of those things, they do add up to your given day of shoot. But keeping shoot aside, during prep also you are accounting for these things, because at the end of the day, it changes the way that you look at many different things that you're filming. Whether you're filming an intimate scene, or you're filming a scene with extras, or you're filming a scene which has a certain number of people within a confined space, you start to look at things differently, because at this point, especially with COVID, you're looking at it being a place where it's a hotbed for transmission, right? A set, which is any closed space or any place with air conditioning, or any place where, so day one, when I began in the bio bubble, we were shooting in PPE, okay? Complete PPE. And we were basically sequestered at this fantastic hotel, and all of our meals were delivered to us. So even though it was a beautiful hotel, it was a bit like jail, because you couldn't fraternize and you couldn't hang out with the other people, but you're just in your room, and this food would come, and they'd ring the doorbell and leave your food by the door, and you'd eat your food in silence quietly and feel like, why am I here? And then you'd go to set the next morning, fully dressed in PPE, shooting in locations that may not even be air conditioned. So people are now passing out from being exhausted, because you're sweating, and it's not the thing is, our jobs don't entail a lot of just sitting around, right? You're on the move, whether even if you're sitting or not sitting, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're still exhausted at all points. So it was a game changer. COVID coming into the scene was a game changer, because you do, especially as someone who's running a set or someone who's show running, you are responsible for the crew. So you want to make sure that people are not getting sick. And how do you do that? By accounting for certain things, by testing people. There were productions, for example, who may not have tested, but then whatever. But the productions, for example, that I worked with, we were doing tests every few days. If we had to film with extras, we were curtailing the number of people, making sure that they were tested. And to some extent, it's also a bit of a hit and miss, because at the end of the day, there will be dividing crews into zones. You sit and do a safety briefing well in advance, during the months of prep, so that you can work this out. Right now, I think during the lockdown, this whole health and safety department came up with a bang. There were vendors left, right, and center with newfangled cool names. Yeah. And everyone was with certification saying, I am the best in the business. And
ridiculous.
It was
daylight robbery.
Yeah, it was a lot like that, because there were some people who were saying shit I have UVC robots that are going to come sterilize the set. Yeah. And also do you know that to be able to function with those UVC bots, there's a certain amount of things and also it'll only clear certain surfaces. If there are things inside a box, that's not getting sanitized. So there was a lot where people were also really anxious it obviously built anxiety where there were actors, for example, who were always at the threat of getting something. So how do you try to,
Exactly.
yeah, it's.
I mean, I'll pick up on three things, and I'll try and keep it very, very short, guys. And I want you all to think about this. And I'm also figuring this out. But the analogy that I apply to this is the risk mitigation analogy, right? If I'm doing a stunt of someone jumping off 100 foot from 100 feet, I will say that's high risk. I will mitigate that risk. I will make him jump from 70. I will add a net and I will add a harness. The same needs to apply to COVID. So assess the risk of a particular scene, a particular location, a particular set of actors. Plan to mitigate that risk. If the risk is not mitigated, change your plan. So have the same filter and system and process for each scene and each day, right? And I think it's a philosophical point that we need to think about, guys. We need to rebrand safety. Safe has to be the new sexy, guys. Like, you need to say, I want to hire this person because you know what? She's fucking on it and her department is safe. So decentralize, make departments in charge of their own health and safety with, supervised by a health and safety department or ADs or whatever. But if you don't decentralize, you have no chance. If you don't risk mitigate, you have no chance. And if you have to assume that you have to stop, pause, and think. So there's three things I say: like stop, pause, think, assess risk, mitigate risk. If risk is not mitigated, change the fucking plan and rebrand safety. ये philosophical points नहीं करेंगे ना, तो ये cohort, ये testing, ये bio bubble, ये कुछ नहीं होने वाला. It's not going to work. It's the philosophical mindset that if we start working on today with the reality of India and the reality of having to pay our bills and work. I've done it. I must have done maybe 15 ads since COVID began. Got home, quarantined, etc. The usual, right? But it remains high risk, guys. COVID filming remains high risk. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, what are the strategies to make that high risk into medium? On which days and which scenes can we make that medium into low? And then we have half a chance of kind of surviving. But it's going to be challenging. There is no doubt about it. And to go back to the question of does it add time? It must add time. It hasn't. We haven't given it the respect yet of giving it more time. We must allocate more time to it. There is never enough money. There's never enough hours in the day. We have to figure out what it means to allocate time to COVID as an industry. I don't have the answers on how we find the money to do that, because the health and safety department budget is different to scheduling.
Yeah, and I think COVID, even the COVID discussion is kind of evolving as we go along.
It is.
What we did till March is no more relevant anymore. No. Because now we know that it's an airborne disease. It's not. It has nothing to do with surfaces and there are so many things. 6 foot distance and social distancing is not everything. It's so much more, and nobody even knows anymore. I think
very complex.
Yeah. And besides that, I think one of the things, I was also part of a show between Jan to March, and one of the things I realized was, I think those things that we're talking about planning, which we talk about when we're talking about any film, is very useful here. So because I functioned in a very different role where I was the second unit director, which meant even something as small as a lunch break, I couldn't break at the same time as the other unit broke, so that we wouldn't crowd the lunch space. So we had to make sure that our lunch breaks were staggered and people went in different points, or if I wanted suddenly, also because second unit is so fluid and all of that, and things keep coming up. If I wanted 10 extras the next day, I couldn't have them, because you need to test extras and then make sure that they are there ready for you to be used. You can't have equipment coming in at will, because somebody coming in from Bombay will have to test. He has to spend 48 hours to 72 hours and then start working. So there are so many things that add to all kinds of things. We had a person like a Steadicam from another set coming to us. He shot with the main unit, and then I said, can I have him the next day, because he was free, and they said, no, you can't have him, because we've realized that set had COVID. So now he has to be secluded, and we have to wait.
And one more thing I'll sort of add to a small thing is, this is an opportunity to build capacity, to reduce crew with empathy, because it's hard to reduce crew with a degree of empathy and compassion. But we are our crew sizes are a relic of the industrial age, right? They're not mechanized. They are more hands on deck and less machines, right? But look where technology is now. I mean, if you can control the lighting of a scene on an app, you don't need 25 light boys. It's just not happening. Now, if you build capacity, you reduce crew size. If you reduce crew size, you mitigate risk. If you build capacity across the technical departments, you end up with a more efficient, lighter, nimble crew, right? And it's a chance for us to empower with empathy and build people up, not to sort of make too fine a point, because everyone cannot afford it, and not just to give it more time, but to allocate more resources to it. So pay people for down days. I don't know. Pay people to actually quarantine, because actually, if you don't actually quarantine 14 days, guys, it's no point quarantining. The truth of the matter is that if you come in, if you don't do it for 14 days, it's no good to say I quarantined 48 or 6 and I started to shoot. You could be asymptomatic. You could be a super spreader. It's happened.
Yeah.
It's happened. I have seen it happen. Now, which production has the luxury to pay for 14 days of quarantine? Yeah. It's very hard to find that money. It's so we don't know enough. We find some answers. We do what we can. We decentralize, and hopefully better and slightly easier days lie ahead with vaccines and so on and so forth. But it will remain very, very challenging for a country like ours. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, so we started prep sometime last year, I think mid last year, and we shot October, November, December, January actually. So we were basically just getting out of the bad times last year. But it was it was pretty chaotic, because at that point in time, platforms were also bringing in their own health and safety teams and protocol officers and things of that sort. And then we had like several vendors that we tried, but I think that a lot of it was just it was just, to be very honest, I mean, I think a lot of it is just a show, because you have these tunnels where you're asking people to walk through, and then 3 months later, then the Supreme Court says that you can't do that. And everything was trial and error for us at that point in time. We managed, in the sense, again, like Udayan said, like, it obviously doesn't make sense to quarantine if it's not 14 days, but we did try and manage about like 3 days, 72 hours and things of that sort. And we housed everyone in a hotel. It just got a little crazy, because we couldn't afford to quarantine like everyone. Like, say for example, actors were still coming in from Bombay, so that really messed up the schedule, because say the actor is supposed to fly in tomorrow and she's shooting like say 3 days later, and if she's COVID positive, then then that's another, and that happened quite a few times. So at that point in time, I think we also understood that we were all pretty much safe. We had a doctor on board. She was pretty much there with us 24/7, but I don't think anyone got like seriously ill or anything. Most of the people who fell who were COVID positive were asymptomatic. But yeah, that is one project. Then we were shooting another pandemic horror of sorts just when the second wave was breaking out, which was even worse, because the thing is that we didn't have the budgets like the previous show had. So we would tell everyone, please tell us, like, we tested them once before the shoot, then once after a week of the shoot. Thankfully, there were 2 people who were asymptomatic, and we got through that shoot. But like, this happened sometime in April, and our hands were tied, which was quite like sad, because if we have to stop shoot, as producers, if we have to stop shoot, it means that the government has to say that now you can't shoot anymore.
Yeah.
Or the union has to say you can't shoot anymore, because I cannot go back to a client or who's putting in the money and saying that, hey, you know what, like, just give us a couple of more days, let this blow over, because we can't really shoot right now, we're risking the entire crew, the lives of the entire crew. But these are things that thankfully we had to stop, because we were actually just waiting for the government order to come in. And this is something that people really don't understand, that this is not something that we can't act on our own for the safety of our crew. It has to come from higher authorities as well, because at the end of the day, we cannot be in a position where, okay, we say that, okay, fine, we for the safety of our crew, we're taking this call and we're going to stop here because, somebody might come back to us and say, okay, then this cost for this extra 14 days of not shooting or just paying the crew just to be on board to continue prep is on you. And that's something that, at most times we cannot afford at all.
Yeah.
It was quite crazy, but thankfully we have another 4 days of shoot to go with crowds and things like that, which I don't think is happening anytime soon, and it shouldn't. And ideally we should all get vaccinated and then get to shoot, but I don't know what's going to happen and what people are going to say anymore. But yeah, it's a very expensive affair. And now, by the end of the year, when people started realizing that, a lot of this is just rubbish and you don't need to spend 20,000 rupees a day where people are just going and sanitizing stuff and you don't even know what the material they are using is, then there was not enough time to actually do a lot of R&D and figure out, okay, this is the right way to go. At that point of time, we went with people who were recommended, people that the platform was recommending, depending on costs and things like that. So thankfully we got someone good the first time. The second time around, not that great because easing of restrictions, and no one really gave a damn anymore until people said, hey, this is really bad, let's stop this right now. So yeah, that was the experience with COVID. So I think it's better that everyone gets vaccinated and then gets back to shoot, as bad as that sounds.
And I think everything changes with this wave. I think our own calculations change because we come back to families and so on. I think a lot changes with this, and it gives us a time to pause and think and reassess, recalibrate. We'll come.
But, I think this is also a good time for the industry to rethink a lot of it. COVID is, yes, one of those crisis situations, but largely our safety and health and safety bars are so low in the film industry for anything. For stunts, for basic thing, you will actually walk into set, people are spraying paint, still getting woodwork done, there's sawdust in the air, there's dust, there's cobwebs. All these things add to your health and safety problems, and no one gives a damn because people think that you're being a diva if you complain about these things.
Yeah.
And I think
really what I mean, you're spot on. That's what I mean by rebranding it. Like a mental shift to rebrand safety, almost like an advertising campaign, to sort of, change hearts and minds on it. And it's a tough ask, there's no doubt, because culturally and for many reasons, many good reasons, social hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, culturally we have not taken it seriously. So it's a hard cultural shift to do it, and it has to come from the top, and it has to come from empathy, it has to come from
from our level at the bottom. One of the things that I feel like we really lack in terms of is sense of cleanliness, order, and we literally leave every set in a state of utter ruin. Okay, and it is such a pity, and it is really frightening what we can do to a space. And I think that's something that we need to bring in as personal responsibility and say that I will do what I can to make sure that I go back leaving no trace of my presence here, except for the film.
No, and I really think, Arya, I mean, the most important point is that actually you need authorities, you need rules, you need those guidelines and rules. It needs to be institutionalized. It needs to be formalized to some degree. Otherwise, we're all on our own, making our own decisions, and those are hard to do.
That's actually something I wanted to pick up on what Arya said, because I remember we were filming and we were going through basically a quarantine protocol, and the project that I did recently, which was a long series that we shot, we actually got really fortunate more than anything else that nobody got COVID on the entire project, because we were really being very stringent, to the point where I had gone to the edit and one of the office boys got exposed, so I was also quarantined and I could not make it to shoot for whatever, because we were being really, really stringent about all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, when, for example, things started to get really lax, by the time we hit January and mid-January, there was an actor who was coming in from a shoot abroad, okay, and it was a high profile actor who then said that there were no more quarantine protocols in place in the country or in the state. So they were just if there are no state protocols, we can't enforce this.
Exactly.
We can't just be don't take that shoot and then come to us after so many days, because they're going to be I'm shooting in the Maldives and no one has said anything to me, so maybe I won't take this job. So then your hands are tied. And I remember having this conversation with the production coordinator where we were figuring out travel, and we were just like, if somebody's coming from an international destination, we cannot be filming with them. They need to be in the city quarantining for X number of days. And even that number kept changing. Like, it would first start at 14, then it'd be like, 7 days, 5 days, and this became a convenience game for a lot of people, because at the end of the day, there were no higher ups who were making these rules. Because the thing is that these rules, once, like now, for example, there may be rules in place about if you're traveling from Maharashtra to any other, city and flying, you need a negative COVID RT-PCR report, right? But for a long time in like January, February, there were no rules in place, right? So people were just flying wherever, and then eventually somebody could be a super spreader. People were still engaging in all of those things that we honestly were waiting to do, like weddings. Like, how do you tell a group crew member, okay, fine, I understand that you're getting tested and stuff, but do not go to your cousin's wedding that's happening here, there, or wherever. Because at the end of the day, we can't, as much as our responsibility lies in securing a set and making it safe, you can't police people either, right? At the end of the day, when these things are not in place in the larger regulation. So right now, it's true, we do need to pay more credence to health and safety. And as Shubha was saying, it's not even just the basic health and safety, sometimes even food and facilities. Like, you might go to a set and realize that there's no restrooms on set. Like, you're just like on location. I mean, there's like 2 restrooms for the entire crew, and you're just like, okay, has no one thought of this? Or, what do we do? And unfortunately, we are so used to that. All of us are so used to rallying and saying, okay, we'll just figure it out. It's fine. We'll shoot today. We'll figure tomorrow. Because that's how we basically hustle and power through everything. So at some level, it would be great if we all took stock of it and went, okay, 1 second, we need to ensure that we've got our basics sorted, because at the end of it, these are very, very basic things. If someone comes to you and says, actually, I have a stomach upset from the food, or, there's like a nail that's in my shoe, it's a very basic thing to have a problem with that then qualifies you as a diva. If someone says, like, for example, an actor says, I'm not comfortable, taking my mask off in such and such, you just be like, there would be people who roll their eyes and be like, but everyone's tested, so, but you shy away from saying these things on a set, because we are led to believe that those are all secondary things. First, let's roll camera and then we'll see what happens. We won't, we'll figure out the rest of it after. Let's get the shot first. And sometimes it's our own enthusiasm, genuinely. You're just like, it's okay, fine, we'll do it. Let's see what happens. So, it's something that we definitely need to pay more attention to. COVID or no COVID, there are many other things. Given the fact that there's been such a big pandemic that has given rise to triple mutants and whatever this year, we don't even know what next year holds. Like, we were sitting pretty in January and February thinking, this is it, we're done. The vaccines are there, we've got AstraZeneca, everyone is sorted. And cut to, we're back in square one, but so much worse now.
But just to bring it on a lighter note, that first film where my first international film where the first AD got fired, the same first AD also looked at our catering on the first day of shoot and came back at the end of the day after he'd seen all the 3 meals or whatever and said, breakfast lacks, we only have I think less than 5% of protein. We need this much vitamins, we need this one. Like, he literally categorized the whole day's catering and said that our crew will fall sick with this kind of food. And basically, we were supposed to be a vegetarian unit that entire film, and people were already going crazy. So they had to make sure that there was plant protein to compensate for all that. I was just amazed that people were sitting and looking at this, like, what are we going to compensate with if they're not going to get an egg for breakfast? Then what is the protein that we're giving them? Those kind of things, I was just amazed. So, those are things that I would really love to learn from them. Also, at the end of shoot, everybody would take a trash bag and go and pick up all the trash. Okay, this is the whole crew and heads of departments. It's not like the lackeys were doing it. It was heads of department, like the head of grips, the head of camera, the head of lighting is picking up garbage bags and going and picking up garbage, because they're if we are the leaders, then we are responsible for everything here. And I found that really admirable, and those are things that we can probably borrow from them.
Yeah, for sure.
And one more thing, I think, regarding COVID insurance, no company offers COVID insurance. You get COVID cover, which is like a Mediclaim, but nobody gives you.
I mean, we don't have workers' comp. Yeah, it's very complex. It's a whole other. It's almost a discussion by itself, actually.
Yeah.
Especially on contractual issues.
I don't even know if insurance companies have figured it out for productions to actually.
No.
Yeah, we have production insurance, but not if like anyone falls sick with COVID for sure. And but you get hospital cover and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just for hospitalization. That also.
Yeah.
Only if you get hospitalized.
With big disclaimers. Caveats are heavy on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Arya, Udayan, Shubha, Zoya, for a wonderful session. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss an update on film interactions.